Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to Storm Talks. Today we have a really, really amazing gift. Gift? Guest.
Why not?
Sorry. Yes, you are a gift. You're a gift to my podcast.
Alhamdulillah.
But we have an amazing guest, Amira. So there's two Amiras on the panel today. And she is a Muslim sex educator. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah.
English is not my language today.
Yeah. So as Amira said, it's weird saying my name again. As Amira said, I'm a Muslim sex educator, and it's something I started about 5 years ago because I saw a need within the Muslim community because I've noticed a lot of Muslims having certain sexual struggles. And I myself experienced some sexual struggles at the start of my own marriage. And from overcoming that, I continue to see a really huge need for good quality, faith aligned, Islam aligned sex education. So I became a certified sex educator to help the Muslim community.
Wow. Like, just even knowing that you, from your own struggles, like, you've kind of wanted to educate other women on this topic is just amazing to me. I always do find it a bit funny that within the Muslim communities, it's very taboo to discuss sex, even though not all communities, because you have some African communities that talk about it, or they have before marriage, the aunties explain certain things, but it is quite a taboo topic within our Muslim communities. So I have some questions for you. So, how do Islamic teachings influence your approach to sex education?
I would say it forms a very big majority of the way I like to deliver the sex education. I try to keep it very respectful. I try to make sure that anything I say, I double check through my own Islamic research, especially when it comes to whether certain things are permissible or not. I will
Mm,
never allow myself to just say yes or no, it's permissible if I haven't properly researched it myself, either asking sheikhs or through educating myself through books. So I take it very seriously because I know I can potentially be held accountable if I give the wrong information. I'm not an Islamic scholar, but I am a Muslim. And so I am very careful when it comes to
mhm.
educating the Muslim community about certain topics.
Yeah.
My work isn't limited to just permissibility, it's more general sex education for knowledge purposes, especially when it comes to either preventing certain issues that could happen or helping Muslims, whether they're single or married, overcome the struggles that they're already going through.
Wow. Like, to be fair, even with the permissibilities of things, like, I think one of the biggest topics that seems to come up a lot is the oral sex side of things. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest questions that seems to come up, um, and whether it's allowed, whether it's not allowed. And I even feel shy sometimes talking about it,
Yeah.
but it's so important to know these things because I think a lot of us women feel dirty
Mm.
after like these things, or feel nasty, or "Oh, we shouldn't be talking about that." Or I personally don't feel that way, but I know a lot of women that do feel that way.
Yeah.
How do you overcome those feelings of like dirtiness and nasty
Yeah.
feeling? Yeah.
I think it's quite natural for someone to feel like that, feel that way if they were raised in a manner where perhaps sex was very taboo, like the topic of sex was very taboo
Mm.
in their household. Even, I know of girls when they get their period, their mothers and fathers say that it should be something kept quiet. So there's already that kind of shame with regards to like intimate topics.
Mhm.
So, and then we have like one extreme, especially in the Western world, but even in the non Western world, we have the extreme of like hypersexualization. It's like everywhere you go, everywhere you look, it's in your face. And so there is an element of like crudeness and a bit of it comes across as this like cheap, dirty thing that is meant to be like if you start talking about it, it's like you're associating yourself with that hypersexualization. And then there's the other extreme where everything should be hush hush and taboo and don't talk
Mm.
about it ever, sort of thing. And I try to help Muslims come to the middle path because that's what Islam teaches. And in order to help women or men overcome those kind of mindsets around it being dirty or nasty, I try to help people realize that Islam came to liberate us from toxic cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
And so, actually, when you educate yourself in terms of Islamic history, Islam came to free women from things like hypersexualization. Islam came to protect women from, being abused sexually by men, because that was something that was quite rampant at the time of the Prophet before Islam. So I try
Mm-hmm.
to remind people of like the purpose of Islam when it comes to sexuality and intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to remind people that, which is something that I think a lot of people are not aware of, sex within marriage
Mm-hmm.
is something that Allah rewards you for.
Yes.
So it's an act of worship when you are
Mm-hmm.
obeying Allah and being obedient to Allah and deciding I'm only choosing to engage in sexual intimacy within marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
so just really want people to just pause and reflect on that for a moment. If you are getting rewarded, you're getting
Yeah.
good deeds for that intimate act, how can we say it's something dirty?
Dirty.
Because Allah
Yeah.
wouldn't reward us for doing something dirty or nasty. Allah rewards us for doing good, pure, halal things that are
Mm-hmm.
pleasing to Allah.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helps people. A lot of people are quite shocked when I say sex within marriage is an act of worship. Just like if you are getting good deeds for reading the Quran, you can never say, Astaghfirullah, that's a dirty thing, because
Mm-hmm.
Allah tells us, read the Quran, pray. You
Yep.
get good deeds for that. So hopefully through the work I do, people open up their minds a bit and realize, okay, it's not dirty or nasty,
Mm-hmm.
but society, especially over the past, let's say, 50 years, society has kind of cheapened the value of sexual intimacy
Mm-hmm.
because it became so easy to access,
Yeah.
whether it's through porn or through, committing zina, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a huge struggle in the Muslim community. And if we don't provide good sex education to Muslims, they're going to struggle with staying away from the haram,
Mm-hmm.
and they will find accessing the halal also very difficult.
Yeah. And I think if we do not educate our daughters and our boys on sex, then society will educate them on it, and they're not going to get the correct, like you said, the halal respectful way of how to do it, so they're going to learn these things from school and from this and from that. If you're not having these conversations with your children, trust me, society is definitely having those conversations with your
Yeah.
children, and we don't want that. We really don't want that. So actually, just to bring it back to the porn side of things as well, um what is your, because for me, I believe that porn is very, very literally regulated, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, or
It's not regulated
it's
enough.
not regulated enough.
Yeah.
I think porn actually should be banned.
Yeah.
I think there are many women on these porn sites that are there without consent, who are trafficked, who are abused, and I think it's a societal sickness
Yeah.
that really, really needs to be off our internet. Very hard to access. It's so easy to access porn. I
Absolutely, it
just
is.
think, like, from your profession, what are the effects of porn, and how is that affecting, like, men, women, teenagers, children?
It's affecting all ages, unfortunately, from as young as even like 4 or 5. Like, being at school, like someone can just show them, like let's say a child goes to primary school, some of the older years might have a phone and might, be like, oh, look at this, and
My
they
God.
are starting to show it from as young as that age, and it's very, very damaging. A lot of people assume that it's something that just single people or single men watch.
Mm,
It affects single men, single women, it affects married men and married women. So you can imagine, within the context of a marriage, I work with a lot of women clients. A lot of them have told me that it's something that when they find out that their husband is watching porn, it really affects the marriage.
mm,
It kind of feels like a form of cheating, and I guess it kind of is.
it
It's like
is, yeah.
you are engaging in a sexual act through consumption of videos, and instead of being satisfied by your own spouse, you are satisfying your desires through something that is 100% haram, and there's no difference in opinion when it comes to porn. Porn is something
Mm.
haram. So there is a spiritual damage within the marriage, relationship damage within the marriage, and that's if the man or woman is watching that within the marriage. If someone is single, I've noticed that it might just be something that they're like, I don't need to get married. It's something that I can just watch. You know, I don't need
And
a spouse.
please
Yeah,
themselves.
exactly. And then it affects them. Let's like maybe put marriage to the side. Let's say they're not interested in marriage. It's more that they have this kind of compulsive habit that they struggle to stop. And I know that a lot of single people who consume porn, especially if they feel like they can't stop it, it affects their mental health a lot, which then
And their
has, yeah,
confidence. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. I've noticed that it affects their confidence, especially I would say, especially young men, young boys. I've seen quite a few videos of like men who are coming out to say, they've completely quit watching porn, but the lead up to that quitting point, they were unhappy, depressed,
yeah,
gaining weight, just always at home, not sociable,
yeah,
because they're just consumed by this pornographic content.
yeah,
So it is, I think, a disease, can be a disease, can be an addiction as well.
yeah,
It's I did see something on your page as well that kind of made me sick, but it was I think a man was requesting to urinate on his
he was
wife.
requesting for his wife to urinate on him so that he could be aroused
But
that
this
way.
is complete khaba'ith. Like, this is dirt.
Yeah,
This is disgusting. So again, even that, I would even say it opens the realms of uh maybe wanting to experience with the opposite gender as
yeah,
well. So
yeah,
I've realized that too, because some men are consuming homosexual,
yeah,
gay, pornographic content,
yeah.
and some women are not aware of this, and they're
Mm,
marrying men who are consuming that. what
yeah.
what would your advice be on those?
Yeah, so I have a video on my YouTube channel which is called Questions Before Marriage. And it's not your typical kind of questions, it is sex related questions to talk about with a
Mm.
potential spouse. And some people have left comments on the video and said, this is not something you talk about with a potential spouse. I want to iterate the importance of talking about sexual topics before you get married, because as Muslims, we are not meant to live in a bubble
Mm-hmm.
and have these rose tinted glasses and think that everyone in the Muslim community is, you know, amazing and wonderful and perfect and
Toxic.
doesn't ever commit sin. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the Muslim community have sexually compulsive habits, and it is
Mm-hmm.
important to try and have conversations with a potential spouse. It's not something you would have early on, but if you're getting to know someone, because I actually need to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Someone told me that they got married, that person has a child, and this person is a woman. She was married to a hafiz
Mm-hmm.
and he watched porn.
Wow.
So this is what I'm trying to say. You can't just judge a person of like this person is perfect because he's religious.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
important to open your mind a bit and think it's like, as you said, it's kind of like this sickness, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
that is affecting a lot of people. I'm not saying we should automatically judge a person if they are struggling with porn consumption and deep
Mm-hmm.
down they regret it or they want to overcome it. But it's like it's kind of along the lines of an addiction, where you
Yeah.
think of if someone's really struggling with a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, they might be able to overcome it on their own, but most of the time they need professional help to overcome it.
Mm.
The same applies to porn consumption, because it affects certain things like dopamine in your body, where you become, in a way, addicted to it, where it just feels like it's hard to stop. It is
Mm-hmm.
possible to stop, but it needs a proper process and proper professional help to stop.
Yeah, I do think there needs we need more brothers to stop focusing on sisters, hijab style and in the comments of TikToks,
Yeah,
and start building something to help your brothers who are dealing with these things.
yeah,
Instead of wasting your time on TikTok, do something productive for the community. I do find that this is something that needs to happen. And I think that point that you made of this Hafiz who was also, I personally would always, if somebody was extra performative with their faith and
Mm,
extra performative of this pious, I see straight through that.
mm,
I don't actually, I don't like that act of pure
mm,
piousness. I don't get it. It's just
yeah.
performative. There's piety, somebody who's pious, but somebody who's performative,
Mm,
you can kind of see it. If
yeah.
somebody's acting like they're an angel,
Yeah.
I would say that's a big drapeau rouge,
Yeah.
a big red flag
Yeah.
that you need to kind of question that person more.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to link your YouTube video into this video because it's so important to ask these questions.
Yeah.
Some people might be like, okay, she's a bit forward, but then maybe that person's not mature enough.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Because if you're going to have to spend your time and days with this person doing sexual acts,
Exactly.
I need to know certain things.
Absolutely.
Would you also promote or push? Because I'm somebody who has said if my husband cheats on me, I wouldn't forgive it. I
Mm-hmm.
personally would not forgive it because I'd see it as you're trying to kill me.
Mm,
Like you're going out there, you're getting collecting all the diseases, you want to bring it to me and kill me.
mm,
So it's attempted, murder. I'm not interested.
yeah.
Would you say that this is something you would promote, like having those checks before marriage?
Yeah. So I know that there are some imams and sheikhs who do, before they allow the nikah to go ahead,
Hmm.
it's something that is becoming more common where they say you need to get, an STD check
Hmm.
before getting married, because there are Muslim men and women having sex before marriage, and it is something that you do need to protect yourself
Hmm.
from. So yes, it is important.
Yeah, I think it should be a requirement
Yeah.
before nikah. I think more mosques across the UK and further out need to do this. I do
Yeah.
think it's very important, especially within my Black community, Asian community. Some people have sickle cell traits as
Mm,
well.
mm,
So understanding that, look, what could that implication be on our children as well? I think it's really important that people do have blood works as well,
yeah.
blood works and STD checks. Of course,
Yeah.
we have to work all in Allah, but it's Allah also says to protect ourselves in
Absolutely.
in certain ways.
Absolutely.
So obviously, there's a lot going around at the moment of this consent thing. So I want to see, like, what would you say in as a Muslim sex educator in regards to consent within marriage?
Hmm.
Yeah, well, within marriage because we're not talking about it outside of
Yeah.
marriage, but some people will say the marriage itself is consent
Hmm.
to sex. But what would you say? Because I think a lot of women do have, sexual intercourse with their husbands, and sometimes they don't want it,
Hmm.
but the husband will kind of proceed anyway.
Yeah.
So where's the red line?
So there is a term called marital rape,
Hmm.
and I believe it's a real thing. There are some people, usually men, who try to dismiss it. And as you're saying, some people wrongly assume, that a marriage, an Islamic marriage, is a blanket consent for sexual intimacy. A nikah is Allah's kind of permission for that couple to engage in sexual intimacy, not just penetration, any
Mm.
kind of, even just touching, holding,
Touch.
kissing, all of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
That is allowed within marriage. But we know in Islam, Islam is meant to be a sort of a gentle religion. There is meant to be compassion, mercy, and understanding. And I want people to realize that even though sexual intimacy is allowed within marriage, that is not the main goal of marriage. Allah tells us in the Quran that the main purpose of marriage are three main things. These are, so I'm not even talking about hadith yet. I'm talking
Hmm.
about Allah's words in the
In the
Quran. What is
Quran.
what is the purpose of marriage?
Yeah.
That is the foundation that we need to come to when a man or a woman, when a man wants to engage in sexual intimacy, he needs to remember that he can only have sexual intimacy with his wife because he's married to her. But what is marriage? Let's talk about marriage first, because the
Mhm.
sexual intimacy can't happen if he's not married. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's go to the foundation of marriage. Three main things: sakina, mawadda, and rahma.
Wow.
If you are forcing sex on your wife, is that sakina, like
No.
peace and tranquility?
No.
Is that mawadda? If you're doing it against her will and she really doesn't want it, is
Mhm.
that love?
Mm-mm.
Is it rahma? Are you being compassionate, merciful,
Merciful.
understanding?
Mm.
That needs to be the foundation for sexual intimacy. Now,
Period.
yeah, the context matters as well.
Mhm.
Forcing sex on anyone, man doing it to the woman, woman doing it to the man, is not allowed. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's why I said marital rape is a thing. Because
Mhm.
what is rape? Rape is forcing sex on another person
Mhm.
without their consent. They are not saying, yes, I'm happy to do this. So that's
Yes.
what rape is. So
Mhm.
marital rape is where you are forcing sex on your spouse.
Mhm.
Okay. And rape outside of marriage is a bad thing. In my opinion, rape
Mhm.
inside marriage, to me, is kind of worse, because why
Yes.
would you do that to the person you are meant to love the most, your own
Mhm.
spouse?
Mm.
That is not to say that a woman or a man should regularly refuse intimacy,
Yeah.
but it is required for the spouses to be understanding of each other. So let's say that a man wants to engage in sexual intimacy with his wife and she doesn't want to.
Mhm.
Instead of forcing it on her, communicate and ask her why. Because 99.9% of the time, there is a reason.
Valid
Okay.
reason
If you
too.
married a good
Mhm.
woman
Yeah.
and you are providing for her, and when I say providing, I'm not talking about financial, of course, that's important. I'm talking about providing for her emotionally, being there for her, supporting her, helping her with her things that she does, whether it's in the home or whether she works. If you are there for her emotionally,
Mhm.
99.9% of the time, and she feels rested and she doesn't have health issues, she's going to want to engage in sexual intimacy with you, because
Yes.
women need that emotional provision, that emotional connection.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if there is an instance where she doesn't want to engage in intimacy,
Mhm.
there's a reason. It could be that you've just had an argument and
Mhm.
she lost a bit of that emotional connection with you as a man because of the argument, and she just
Mhm.
doesn't feel in the mood for it in that moment.
Mhm.
Communicate and work towards resolving that issue and getting back onto being lovey-dovey, because then it's going to
Mhm.
be easy to engage in sexual intimacy. It could be that she's just extremely tired. I know a lot of women who
Mhm.
work and then come home, take care of the kids, and
Mhm.
by the time the kids are fed and in bed, the wife is exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's the man's responsibility to understand that, okay, my
Mhm.
wife is tired, how can I help her to feel less tired? She might have health issues, she might have struggles, hormonally. So it's about how can I seek treatment for her. So it's about figuring out the reason.
Mhm.
Why is my wife not interested in intimacy? Communicating with each other, and if necessary, work with a medical professional or a healthcare professional to help resolve those issues. Sometimes it could also be relationship issues. And
Mhm.
so, if those relationship issues are something that the couple are struggling to resolve together, again, they can seek professional help, like with a marriage therapist or a counselor.
Yeah. Well, I think the sakina is so important. Peace. Because Allah essentially created us to have spouses to find peace with
Yeah,
one another. So if you are brutally attacking, because it is an attack, like
yeah,
I've said I don't want to do this and you're still proceeding, I'm not in the mood, my body's physically not in the mood, and you still force, yeah, then it's wrong. I just
yeah,
think how can a woman deal with that then? Like, what does she do? Because as a Muslim, I wouldn't. It's so difficult. I think this is really the gray area that people don't want to talk about. But
mm,
I think a lot of Muslim women aren't reporting this or aren't really discussing this because it's almost like, okay, well, it's happened this time, we forgive. Maybe next time it will not happen. But when does that cycle end? What can she do in that moment to stop this from happening? It's
yeah. So
hard.
yeah, it is hard, and it's dependent on where she
Yeah.
lives as well, the country she lives.
Oh, yes.
I'm not sure if what I'm going to say is correct, but I think someone sent me an article of something in Egypt where now
Hmm.
marital rape is recognized. Don't quote me on that. Just you might want to double check the
Yeah.
research, but I remember someone sending me some. article saying that it wasn't something recognized before, but now if a woman goes and reports that her husband forced sex on her and raped her, then
Mhm.
they are recognizing it more. But it's something that needs to be taken seriously because it's a form of abuse.
Yes,
So yeah.
definitely. And I think it's also like a just you've just pushed all the boundaries, you know. And I think when women say no, because there is obviously the abuse of hadith as well, like where it says the angels will curse you until the
Mm,
next the next morning if you don't, you know. But if I've got a headache,
yeah.
it's valid. If I'm tired, I'm absolutely exhausted,
Yeah.
I just don't want, then that should be
Yeah.
valid.
Okay, let's talk about that
Yeah,
angels cursing hadith because it comes up a
a
lot.
lot.
Let's take that hadith first of all on face value.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's say the angels, let's say no matter what, if the wife says no, even if she's so tired, exhausted, stressed,
Hmm.
we're taking that hadith at face value. Okay.
Hmm.
And she's not allowed to say no according to this hadith because if she says no, even if
Hmm.
she's tired, exhausted, ill, if she says no, the angels are going to curse her.
Yeah.
Where in that hadith does it say it's okay for the man to force it? It
Yeah,
doesn't say it.
it
Okay. We're just,
doesn't.
and that's just us taking it at face value.
Mhm.
Now, when we go deeper and actually study the kind of tafsir and the context of that hadith, there are some people who state that the hadith might be weak. There are others that say it's authentic. Okay, let's say it's authentic hadith. We're going to go with that. It's
Mhm.
an authentic hadith, but when you study, there's an organization called Karama. They studied the context of this hadith. This hadith is only applied if a woman is saying no to sexual intimacy without really any valid reason. She's simply saying no because she kind of wants to
Use it.
diminish her husband and kind
Mm.
of manipulate her husband, use it against him. She
Mhm.
hasn't got a reason, right?
Mhm.
In another situation, she would normally have said yes, but maybe she's just like, I don't really like that my husband did this little thing to annoy me, and I know I haven't had sex with him in months, and I'm just going to keep on trying to weaken him and diminish him and oppress him
Mhm.
and manipulate him.
Yeah.
This is not common, but there are
Mhm.
some women who don't have good character that might be like that.
Mhm.
That's where this context, where that's where the hadith comes into context, where the angels curse that type of woman who is trying to kind of manipulate or oppress her husband by denying sexual intimacy with him.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say that I am someone who really believes that sexual satisfaction within marriage for the man and the woman is very
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
I believe in it, it's important for the man,
Mhm.
100%,
Mhm.
and for the woman. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not here saying that women should regularly say no to intimacy. What I am saying is if she says no, it's the husband's duty and the wife's duty as well to communicate.
Yes.
How can I make you feel in the mood? What can we do? But also, a lot of people, not just Muslims, a lot of people have one idea of sex. They see
Mhm.
it as just penetration.
Yeah.
Sex is so much broader than that. There
Mhm.
are so many non penetrative forms of intimacy because for some women,
Yes.
penetration
Let's
is
talk
like a
about
big
that.
deal. Either it's uncomfortable or they have to really spend loads of time in foreplay and exert quite a lot of effort to even build up that arousal to make penetration more comfortable. And so sometimes they might just want it to be quick and they might not want penetration to happen. Like I said, it might be
Mm.
uncomfortable, or there might be certain hormonal changes happening in her body where she feels quite dry down there.
Yeah.
It's important for the couple because it's halal for them to do anything sexually. But there are
Mhm.
only two prohibited acts when it comes to sex. They can do anything sexually to
What are
satisfy
the
the.
two
I'll talk
prohibition?
about it on sec. They can do anything sexually. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be penetration.
Mhm.
The wife can still satisfy her husband with non-penetrative methods. So just to make it really clear, like if a man, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just trying to prove a point, especially to
Yes.
men, if there are
Mhm.
any men listening to this, that a man technically could satisfy himself with his hands, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Why not the wife do that sometimes? If the man has
True.
desire, right,
Mhm.
and the wife just doesn't feel up for full penetration for the reasons I mentioned, like struggling to get
Yeah.
aroused or struggling to get wet, she could satisfy him with her hands, or
Mhm.
he could satisfy himself on her body. It doesn't have to go in, right?
Mhm.
So it's important to see sexual intimacy as like a menu of different options.
Yeah.
Penetration is one option on the menu, but there are so many
Yes.
other types of intimacy that you get to enjoy
Mhm.
that can lead to mutual
Yeah.
satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
The two types of sexual acts that are forbidden in Islam are anal penetration,
Yep.
completely forbidden, and I haven't found any difference in opinion on
No,
that.
it's complete. Just don't do it, guys.
Yeah,
It's.
completely
I
forbidden.
can imagine it stinks.
Yeah,
Just.
completely forbidden. And the other one is penetration when a woman's on her period.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
I said penetration, so just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Meaning, so I'm just gonna,
You can still kiss.
yeah, you can still do
Yeah.
sexual things,
Mm-hmm.
but there is no penetration allowed when a woman's on her period.
Yeah.
So what that means is,
And after she gives birth as well,
yeah,
isn't it? In the
exactly. Yeah, when
first
she's
40
still like
days.
having her bleeding off. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So basically, just
Enjoy yourselves. You can
yeah,
do anything and
do
everything
anything.
apart from those two acts.
Yeah, because even when a woman's pregnant, it's very uncomfortable sometimes to,
Yeah,
be doing sexual acts. You've got a big belly in front of
yeah,
you, like you're not really looking to be doing all of that.
yeah,
It's just already my body's a burden.
yeah,
Bloody hell. Like I'm pregnant, my back hurts,
yeah,
my hips are killing me.
yeah,
And then on top of that, you want to come
yeah.
and just yeah, no.
So
So
they can enjoy each other other ways. I mean, some
yeah.
pregnant women have like it varies depending on like what trimester she's in. She might find at certain points like she has desire
Mm-hmm.
and she enjoys penetration. Other
Mm-hmm.
times it might not be penetration. It can be those other forms of non-penetrative methods. And yeah, so I think just what's really important in a marriage, to come
Mm-hmm.
back to the three purposes like sakina, mawadda, rahma,
Yeah.
it's important for there to be regular communication and regular emotional connection between the spouses,
Mm-hmm.
because the moment you kind of stop that, you become distant, you start to resent each other. Like if the wife says no, I'm really tired, or I'm like heavily pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
the man might not put himself in a mode of like, I need to understand my wife, I need to understand that
Mm-hmm.
she's not a robot, she's a human. And actually, unfortunately, that's why I'm going to come back to why it's so important to have discussions before marriage about
Mm.
sexual topics
Yeah.
in a respectful way, with the intention to either prevent future problems or stop yourself from marrying someone that you might not have the same mindset on, compatibility wise, in
Yeah.
terms of sexual topics. So it's so important to realize that emotional connection is really important, because if someone before they get married, like let's say a man was watching porn before marriage, a lot of the time it kind of changes his brain chemistry and changes his
Mm.
view of women, kind
Yeah.
of objectifying women. I have a few women in my life who have told me that when they're getting to know a potential spouse, um, unfortunately this is happening like especially on the like Muslim marriage apps,
Mm.
when they're getting to know a potential spouse, there are some men on there who are saying things like, when I get married, these are the types of sexual acts I would like. And a lot of them come from porn. They're
Yeah.
very kind of objectifying women. So it's something that you want to protect yourself from.
And it's okay to have, for example, alter egos that like you were saying on your Instagram and foreplay and things like this. But when you're asking for really weird things,
Mm,
like just weird acts, this is where you have to kind of draw the line. I think it's scary
yeah.
that men are quite blunt and saying this on dating apps.
Yeah.
And I've heard a few things about these dating apps that I'm just like shocked.
Yeah.
Like you're crossing the line here.
Yeah.
But um being having your platform and having your kind of your Muslim sexual education content out there, have you had any backlash? And because I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
a lot of people are kind of seeing the negative of it, kind of thing,
Yeah.
as a woman as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had loads of comments and messages and I tend to ignore them.
Yeah, good.
Just, I think people see one video I make and
Mm,
automatically judge. They will automatically think, okay, Muslim woman, why is she talking about sex? Rather than actually like researching my story. What, like,
mm,
my story is I experienced a sexual struggle in my marriage and I overcame it by myself. I didn't speak
mm,
to my parents about it. I did, and I got married like back in 2008, so it's a different time to now. We're in 2024. I didn't have access to the resources or the community to help me overcome that struggle. I
Mm.
have this platform I have now because I don't want Muslim men and women who are struggling to struggle in silence and
In
to struggle.
shame, in
Exactly.
silence.
Yeah.
Like I never knew of vaginismus, for example, until your page. Like, and then I could actually think, I actually know people who suffer with this.
Mm,
So I've just been sending them your page, like, look, this is what it is you're probably dealing with, you know? Do you want to touch upon that just
yeah.
in case? Because I do think it's so informative. And even like my sisters are here now, this is something I want them to know about. I want them to know certain things before marriage so that
Mm,
they're informed and they know actually this is normal. This is not normal. If
yeah.
you're, you know, your husband's being brutal and rough and just that's not normal,
Yeah.
you know. And I
Yeah.
think it is so important that we have platforms like yours where we're talking about these things. I actually commend it. I think you're brave for doing it. And I think we need to see more of it. We need to push it more because that education is key. It really is key to actually preserving marriage. Like, you know, there is a big huge issue with divorce in our
Mm,
communities and things like that, and you know, sometimes for the very very right reasons, but sometimes it's because of just a lack of
mm,
education,
yeah.
which I think you're definitely providing, you know. So what is vaginismus?
So, vaginismus is a condition that some women experience where if they are trying to have anything going into their vagina,
Mm-hmm.
it could be during penetration, during intercourse,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the man's penis is going in, or it could be other times, let's say she's on her period and wants to try and insert a tampon. It could be when she goes to the doctors or the gynecologist, and they might need to do an internal
Smear
vaginal,
test,
exactly, smear
yeah.
test, vaginal examination. And so they use like a medical object, like a speculum, that needs to be inserted into the vagina. So vaginismus can apply to anything that is going into the vagina. If a woman experiences a lot of pain and difficulty and quite a lot of discomfort
Mm-hmm.
into pain, like getting into pain territory, where it's
Mm-hmm.
just really painful to get that object in, sometimes it's actually impossible, meaning it just doesn't even go in, not even like a small amount. Sometimes it can
Wow.
go in a bit, but it's very painful, the amount that goes in,
Mm.
and then it might just not go in any further. That is usually if you rule out other kind of medical abnormalities. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
the woman medically, or in terms of physically, her
Mm-hmm.
body and her vulva and vagina is normal.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't have any abnormalities in that region. Usually, that pain or that difficulty of insertion is because of the condition vaginismus. And the way vaginismus occurs is where surrounding the vagina in
Mm-hmm.
women are pelvic floor muscles. Okay, they surround your vagina and your anus.
Mm-hmm.
In men, men also have pelvic floor muscles as well. But let's just focus on women for a moment. So in vaginismus, what's happening is usually if a woman is feeling quite nervous or afraid of
Mm-hmm.
something going in, maybe she's afraid it's going to hurt, maybe she's never felt anything in there before, so she's feeling anxious or nervous of something potentially going in for the first time. She's worried it's going to be uncomfortable, painful. Usually, when you're feeling nervous, you have kind of like this fear or stress within your body, anxiety that
Mm-hmm.
causes the muscles in your body to contract. Exactly.
Wow.
Just happens. Usually, it happens subconsciously. You're not even aware of it. Okay.
Mm.
Kind of like if you're bracing for danger, automatically your body just kind of tenses up. So, if a woman is
Wow.
afraid of something going in, her pelvic floor muscles that are surrounding the vagina, they automatically contract quite tightly.
Mm.
So tightly that it makes the vagina very narrow.
Mm.
And so, if the vagina has become very narrow, there's going to be friction resistance for something going in, and there will be usually some pain or extreme discomfort,
Mhm.
and it will feel for a woman who's experiencing vaginismus where let's say she's trying to have sexual intercourse, it will feel like a wall, like
Yeah.
there's a block, like no matter how much the husband, for example, if it's sexual intercourse, no matter how much he tries to go in, it will feel like there's something blocking it,
Wow.
and if he keeps
Subhanallah.
trying, it will feel very painful for her. So
Subhanallah.
that's what vaginismus is.
Wow. It just makes me think of rape, to be honest, and
Mm,
how maybe the body tries to protect
mm,
itself as well.
yeah,
And just why that act is so brutal, I do think is quite disgusting.
yeah.
So wow. So what would be the cure for that? Like if she's really struggling, what would how can she loosen up
Yeah,
kind
I
of
love
thing?
that question. Because it's something I went through. That's why I became a sex educator, because I wanted to prevent. That was the main
Mm,
reason I set up my social media a few years ago. It was primarily to help women overcome vaginismus, because I had that personal experience. I went through it. I knew how I felt when I was going through it. I felt really abnormal. I felt like,
mm,
why is sex so difficult and painful for me when everyone else can do it so easily? I felt like I was like an incomplete woman. I don't like saying that,
mm.
because now I know that
You
my
understand.
womanhood is not based on sex, but that's basically me. I'm just saying the thought process that I had going through it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thought process that a lot of my clients tell me that they go through too, where they just feel like, why? I know a lot of women tell me, like, I was a good Muslim girl, and I did, I grew up and I never had sex before marriage, and then I saved myself for marriage, but now I'm married and I can't even do this thing. Like, is Allah punishing me? I have that a lot,
Mm.
where they think,
Oh.
I know. So it's very isolating. And
Mm.
so the cure for vaginismus is the same thing that I recommend women to do even before they get married.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the education that we were talking about, how important education is, especially about
Yeah.
our body.
Mm-hmm.
What's needed is, first of all, to understand that we have pelvic floor muscles that surround our vagina. When
Mm-hmm.
I was an 18, 19-year-old, I got married very young, 18, 19. When I was an 18-year-old, I didn't even know what pelvic floor muscles were. I had
Yeah,
never heard
neither
of
did I.
vaginismus before. But it's that now, having this ability to use social media to like
Learn.
educate can help
Mm-hmm.
prevent it from happening. So if a woman is experiencing vaginismus or experiencing painful penetration, I want women who don't have it or have not been married yet to do the same sorts of things. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the process that I guide my clients through, and I'm happy to share. So the first thing is to learn how to relax your pelvic floor muscles. We have access to the internet. You can literally just type it online. How do I relax my pelvic floor muscles? It sometimes comes up as what's called a reverse Kegel. Many people are familiar with Kegels or Kegels, however you pronounce
Mm-hmm.
them, where you're like tightening your pelvic floor muscles to make them stronger or healthier.
Yeah.
With vaginismus, you need to learn how to do the reverse. You need to know how to relax them,
Mm-hmm.
because when the muscles are relaxed, it's easier for something to go in.
Okay.
So it's learning, how do I relax my pelvic floor muscles? I also want to inspire women to become in touch with their body, including their female sexual anatomy, the external part.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, we're kind of shamed into thinking like your naked body is shameful. Of course, like there is modesty. We cover ourselves when we go out in public, for example. But like when you are by yourself, you can
Mm-hmm.
look at yourself naked. I'm not saying you do it
Mm.
every day, but you are allowed to look at your own body. It's a creation of Allah,
Yeah.
naked. And this is something important to do, where you become familiar with your naked body before you get married. Because a lot of the time, women tell me, like, I'm married, but I feel so uncomfortable being naked in front of my husband,
Mm.
because that they've never been naked by themselves before. Or
Yeah.
they've never, they've been naked, but they like, just are naked when they get in the shower, and then they quickly like get dressed afterwards. So
Mm.
being able to just be comfortable with your body. And I recommend, well before marriage, looking at yourself down there. You don't have to do anything, but it's just looking at your vulva,
Mm-hmm.
identifying where your vaginal opening is. And that
Mm.
might sound crazy for me to say that, but it's really not, because if
I
you
don't
think
think
about
that's
it,
crazy at
yeah,
all.
but if you think about it,
Yeah.
when you get married as a woman, if you're trying to engage in penetration with your husband,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't actually know where your vagina or vaginal opening is, because it's
Mm-hmm.
doubt your sexual anatomy, the external sexual anatomy in its entirety is called the vulva. The
Yeah.
vagina is one part of the vulva. Okay, there are
Right.
other parts like the vaginal lips.
Mm-hmm.
You have like where we urinate from, which is
I think
separate.
men don't even know
Yeah,
this as well, to be
exactly.
honest.
So imagine you're a
Mm-hmm.
woman, you don't know where it is, like the,
Yeah.
the opening of your vagina. Your
Mm-hmm.
husband also doesn't know where it is. He's trying to
Yeah.
figure it out.
So
So
it's
before you
just.
get married, look at yourself
Mm-hmm.
and identify where your vaginal opening is. And if you're not sure, you can literally just type diagram of the vulva.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a real person's one, it's just a diagram, just like you would see, if
In a
you went
science
in a
book.
science book,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, type diagram of a vulva and look at the different parts. You've got the clitoris, you've got the labia, which are the vaginal lips, and then you've got the vaginal opening. You
Mhm.
need to kind of match that to your own one.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are like, is mine normal? Most of the time, it's normal.
It's
It's not going
normal.
to look symmetrical. It
Yeah.
might have certain colors on it. That's normal.
Mhm.
Just identify where your own vaginal opening is,
Mhm.
and that will help you. And you can even just put your finger on the vaginal opening. I'm not
Mhm.
saying touch yourself in a
No.
masturbating way. I'm
Yeah.
literally just saying identify where it is to give you that physical sensation.
Mhm.
Because, for example, if a woman is used to using a tampon, she easily can figure out where her vaginal opening is,
Yeah.
right? Just like I'm touching my leg here, I'm like, okay, I can feel
Yeah.
that part of my leg.
Mhm.
You need to feel where is that part of my vagina,
Mhm.
so that when you do try to engage in penetration with your husband for the first time, you can help him navigate that area
Where
and
it is. Yeah.
position his penis in the right place.
Mhm.
In order for penetration to be easy, I recommend, especially for first time intimacy, for the woman to make sure she has lubricant to put on the
Mhm.
penis, and she can also put lubricant on herself. And once she knows how to relax her pelvic floor muscles, that will make it easier for him to go in. For a woman who has vaginismus, usually she still has a fear because she
Mhm.
tried to have penetration and it
And
was difficult and
yeah.
painful. And so usually she would need to practice with tools known as dilators. They don't actually like dilate you and open up. They're
Mhm.
just kind of like tools that come in different sizes that
Mhm.
a woman can use for insertion, just
Mhm.
like it's the same as using a tampon,
Yeah.
basically.
But it's a more of a medical tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. With a tampon, usually it's better to use when you're actually on your period because the
Yeah.
period blood provides some lubrication
Lubricant.
to make it
Yeah.
easier for the tampon to go
Mhm.
in. And it wouldn't be recommended to put lubricant on a tampon because the inner part of the tampon is like cotton and it would just
Mhm.
probably absorb the lubricant.
Yeah.
Whereas a dilator is made of plastic or silicone, so the lubricant on the dilator is going to stay there. It's not going to
Okay.
be absorbed by the object. So
Mhm.
I recommend dilators for women who are experiencing vaginismus, and they can practice relaxing their muscles
Mhm.
and slowly inserting the dilators. And this happens over a number of weeks or a number of months where they practice and build their confidence.
Yeah.
A bit like if someone is trying to learn how to swim for the first time, they might need
Mhm.
to use floats to help them.
Yeah.
They would need to practice regular lessons over weeks or months until eventually they can swim naturally on their own without the floats. Similar analogy when it comes to penetration, using the dilators to help them achieve pain free penetration. And I would say, I would even recommend single women if they're really afraid of something going in,
Mhm.
like as in if they're really afraid of sexual intercourse when they get married, practice insertion beforehand. And I have had it checked by a sheikh. Is it permissible to use dilators? It is, based on
Mhm.
your intention. You're not
Okay.
using it to self pleasure. A lot of the time, people think if I put something inside me, that's like
Mm.
I'm using a sex toy or I'm masturbating. It's not. Because if someone puts a tampon in, they
Mhm.
don't get any pleasure from that. It's like
Yeah.
a tampon is just something going in to absorb period blood. So
Yeah.
that same thing needs to be remembered, that just having something go in doesn't give you pleasure. Like think of if a
I
woman
think
goes,
people are scared
yeah,
of breaking the hymen
yeah,
or breaking their own virginity if
yeah,
they do that. So I can, even with tampons, I think there was a lot of talk. Like my mum would always say, never use that when we were young. So we never used,
yeah,
tampons because we just thought, oh, it's like it can pop your virginity.
yeah. So that's a lot of people have spoken about this, and so
Mm,
the way I see virginity is not based on whether there is any remnants of the hymen. I don't base
mm,
virginity on that.
on the
I
hymen,
base
yeah.
virginity, and I'm not a huge fan of virginity as a concept, but
Concept,
I'll talk
yes.
about it for the
Mm-hmm.
people who are really concerned about that. I see breaking your virginity or losing your virginity as having sex or sexual intimacy for the
Mm-hmm.
first time with
Yeah.
someone, with a
With,
person.
yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't see it, I don't see losing your virginity as inserting a tampon, or if a single woman needs to get a medical examination. I
Okay.
don't see it as like if a doctor needed to insert a medical instrument into her vagina, she's not having sex with that instrument or with that tampon.
Yeah.
So there's a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say. And also, for a lot of women, they have this fear of like breaking their hymen.
Yeah.
In the majority of women, the hymen has already kind of disintegrated
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
time you're, let's say, 20. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a girl, a baby girl, the hymen is usually there for different. Some scientists say it's there to prevent infections, like when a baby girl is, pooing in her
Mm-hmm.
nappy. Some of that could accidentally go into
Going,
the vagina and
yeah,
cause
wow.
infection.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, that hymen is it's basically a membrane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, over time, as that baby girl grows, that membrane, because her body is growing from being a
Mm-hmm.
baby girl to a young girl and then a teenager. Her body is growing. So over time, that membrane starts to become very stretchy, very thin, and
Mm-hmm.
starts to form perforations in it anyways as she
Mm-hmm.
grows. And then as she starts to become more physically active, moving, doing
Mm-hmm.
any kind of sports activity, that is going to form further perforations.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets her period, okay,
Yeah.
because the period comes through the vagina. She
Yeah.
gets her period. So there's no seal there. The hymen is not really
Mm.
there. If it's there, it's just remnants of the hymen that's there. Because if the
Mm.
hymen is fully intact, how is a period going to come out?
Yeah,
Right?
that's
So people
true.
need to realize that there is no
Yeah,
like,
because I think
yeah,
they're culturally, breaking your virginity and seeing the blood, I think
mm,
that's been quite a huge thing. And I think women have been abused and,
yeah,
you know, completely shunned because this blood didn't
yeah,
show and
yes,
stuff like that. So I know that's something that's like really an ignorant kind of way of thinking.
yeah,
Virginity is not based off of the blood.
yeah,
It's based off of, like you said, the physical, one-on-one penetration.
mm.
So wow, there's a lot to learn, I think, when it comes to this topic. I did have one dilemma
Mm-hmm.
from one of my followers who said, how can she stop being afraid of men?
Mm. That's a deep one.
Yeah,
And I think it's
I'll
something.
choose the bear.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The bear is probably the safer option. That's a hard one. Okay, I'm going to start off by saying I do believe there are good men out there. There
Yeah,
are good Muslim
same.
men out there. They seem to be quite rare, but they exist. And I say that not that I know all the men in the world, Allah does, but I know
Hmm.
that there are good men out there. Unfortunately, it seems that what we see online on social
Mm.
media, or the men that we might interact with maybe when we're getting to know someone for marriage,
Hmm.
we're struggling to find those good men. It's like they're hiding, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So in terms of overcoming a fear of men, I think as women we need to not lose hope in Allah, okay?
Hmm.
Because if you are a good Muslim woman seeking a good Muslim man, and you know that he probably does exist, okay,
Hmm.
it is up to you to turn to Allah and ask Allah to put that man in your life and bless
Yeah.
that for you to happen. But because women are just constantly not finding that good Muslim man, or the Muslim men that they're interacting with are not the one for them,
Hmm.
they just kind of lose hope. They've given up hope because there are a lot of Muslim men who are not doing things properly, who are not following Islam properly. That
Hmm.
does exist. I'm not naive to say that all good Muslim men. I'm not naive to say all Muslim men are amazing.
Yeah.
There are some who really need to work on themselves.
Hmm.
Equally, there are some Muslim women that need to work on themselves too.
Yeah.
But if you are a good Muslim woman and you have a fear of men and you're worried about, marrying someone who could potentially, harm you, or, might not be the right person for you, make plenty of dua,
Hmm.
have hope, work on yourself in terms of improving yourself, because when you have inner self-worth and you really raise yourself spiritually, energetically,
Hmm.
that's what you're going to attract. If you have like a low self-esteem and you've given up hope on there being good men, you're going to attract that.
Hmm.
Whereas if you have hope in Allah in placing a good man in your life,
Yeah.
that is what you're going to attract. So that inner work really needs to happen.
Yeah. Have tawakkul in Allah
Yeah.
and don't be afraid of men. We do, we birth men, we
Mm,
raise men. So it's not all men that are bad. And like you said, tawakkul in Allah is the main thing. It's what will, and istikhara, like
yeah.
ask Allah. That's where you rely upon. That's where you lean on. You lean on Allah.
Yeah.
Like, and like Amira said, he will guide and bring the right person to you,
Yeah,
bi'idhnillah. But
absolutely.
thank you so much for
You're
coming
welcome.
onto my podcast. I appreciate it so much. Inshallah, we can do another topic because I feel like we've got so much more to talk
Yeah.
about. But do you want to let them know your kind of Instagram and stuff like that so they
Yeah.
know where to find you?
My Instagram is my name, Amirah Zaky. My name has a H on the end. I know yours
Yeah,
doesn't.
mine does it.
That yours is the more common way.
Yeah.
Mine has a H on the end.
Amirah.
So yeah, Amira Zaki on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. On TikTok, it's Amira_Zaki. I'm on YouTube. I have a website. But yeah, inshallah, people can find me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
If you as a woman or a man are dealing with this and she has services that you can sign up to and you can, ask her for advice, and I think you have a forum as well, that please reach out to Amira. She's amazing. Her content is amazing. Inshallah, may Allah make it better for you and as a reward for you, inshallah. But
I mean,
thank you so much for tuning in to Storm Talks episode 3 with Amirah Zaky. Take care. Bye.